Is democracy in the U.S. an illusion? Well, let's look into this. It's pretty crazy when you break it down and you separate the American population by class. The American working class holds practically zero influence over the policies that are made, while the economic elite, otherwise known as America's capitalists, hold almost all of the influence over the policies that are made. Now think about how crazy that is. The American working class makes up about 84% of the U.S. population. Capitalists only make up 2%, yet democracy and the government work almost exclusively for them and not for us. Now, Americans over the years have been coming to this realization, which is probably why about 80% of our population does not trust its own government. So obviously, American democracy is heavily flawed, but how does it work? Well, to start, popular vote does not determine the election results. We get to pick from a hand-selected group of politicians who got the most funding and support from our wealthy oligarchs and corporations. From there, our free and fair elections are determined by gerrymandering in the Electoral College, where both of these things basically override the popular vote practically every time. So gerrymandering is basically an issue which obstructs democracy on a state level, on a congressional level, and honestly on a presidential level as well. Essentially what this means is the party in power over a state can basically rearrange the districts in a way that could favor their victories and their candidates over the opposing candidates. So not only do you have to pander to the interest of the rich to get the funding and the support and the media exposure, you also have to pander to the parties in power in every state because they can try to rig elections against you. Now, once people do land a position of power in Washington, they're basically lobbied endlessly and consistently by the rich to pass laws that favor their interest over the interest of everybody else in the country. Now, when it comes to our presidential elections, like I stated earlier, it's not popular vote that determines our election results. It's the Electoral College. And basically, the Electoral College is a system in which we assign all the states a certain number of electorates based off of their representatives. Essentially, what this does is it gives smaller populations in more rural areas or more rural states more power and influence over the election results in comparison to the whole population of America. This is why when you see people hitting the campaign trail, they're mostly targeting these swing states that have smaller populations and they're more rural, because it's not the popular vote that determines the election result, it's the Electoral College. And because it's typically winner takes all within these states, you basically just have to win the districts within the state, which are gerrymandered by the political party in power, to win elections. So yeah, in a nutshell, this is basically the American democracy. The very same democracy we attempt to install all over the planet. This is what we can call the democracy of the rich, or the dictatorship of capital. This is where money buys elections and controls the government and basically dictates the lives and policies of a nation. This is why in my last video I stated that Cuba is the most democratic nation in the Western Hemisphere. Because in the US and in capitalist nations everywhere, it is the capitalists themselves who control the government. Therefore, capital dictates policy. In socialist nations like Cuba, it's the masses who determine policy, and policy dictates capital. This is why capitalists hate socialists, because capitalists aim to control the government and economy of a society. Socialists aim to have the public do that. Meaning if the people have the power to control the government or the economy, they essentially have the power to control capital. And if we had the ability to do that, we would just seize the assets and wealth of those at the top. Look, this little sliver right here is 50% of the US population. We would most certainly come together and seize all this wealth at the top. The 10% holds almost all the wealth in this nation. We would most certainly seize all of this wealth and use it to transform society. By dragging trillions down into the base of society, we could use it to finance social programs, construct homes to house all people, do amazing things that all people would benefit from. This is why when nations like Cuba and others have pushed for a democratic control over society, they've been sanctioned, sabotaged, invaded, and basically isolated from the world. And the reasoning to that is simple. If you allow an alternative system like that to coexist in this world peacefully, unhinged, without all the propaganda, war, sabotage, and all the extra stuff, the dictatorship of capitals would be replaced and overthrown globally and be replaced by dictatorship of working classes. And make no mistake, any nation with a government is going to be a dictatorship for the class that controls it, and that's either going to be a dictatorship of the rich or a dictatorship of the working class. Now that's not to say that Cuba is a flawless democracy. Obviously they're not, because the Communist Party can prevent specific candidates from entering the highest chamber of government. But they're also economically under attack by the U.S. empire, so what is their alternative? Do they simply pass reforms and allow the U.S. empire and right-wing oppositions the ability to corrupt, buy, and sabotage the government to restore the dictatorship of capital? capital? Or do they simply prevent these people from obtaining positions of power in the highest chamber? Considering that flaw, there's still a lot we can learn from Cuba's democracy that we could apply to ours. Instead of term limits, we can keep our representatives loyal to us by having them subject to automatic recall at any time. Giving our representatives the ability to hold referendums with us on decisions allows us the ability to exercise direct democracy. By also banning political parties and outlawing campaign financing, we ensure that the self-interest of individuals or money does not rise above the interest or power of the public. Now, these things would advance the power of the working class in any nation, and every nation should implement these things if their concern is having the purest democracy possible. Democracy is the road to socialism, meaning if the democracy of the working class is what we aim to achieve, the democracy of the rich must be overturned by all means necessary. Without revolutionary theory, there can be no revolutionary movement. So read theory, get organized, and let's take down capitalism.